This is Richard Jacobs from myduiattorney.org, and I'm here today with Anthony Lowenstein, a criminal lawyer out of San Francisco and the surrounding counties. And Mr. Lowenstein has agreed to do a interview for us. So we're happy to have him here, and welcome, Mr. Lowenstein. Glad to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to call you Anthony, actually. It sounds a little bit less formal, if you don't mind.
Please.
Okay. Let's get right into the questions. My first question is, how many DUI cases have you handled, and in what time period?
Well, I haven't kept track, but I've certainly handled several hundred over the last 15 years.
Okay. And what would you say is your typical, DUI client's circumstance? Are they a first-time offender or repeat, or they more men than women, or what kind of generalities can you say?
Well, first of all, DUI is an equal opportunity employer that happens to all people across all ages and socioeconomic classes. So I would say that there's no stereotypical DUI. It actually is the kind of thing that happens to everyone. There's two typical defendant circumstances, however. There's the one person who really is an alcoholic and has a problem with alcohol and either has multiple DUIs or they simply have a problem because they're always drinking. Whenever they're stopped, they're likely going to have a DUI. That's usually one type. And the other is the regular, ordinary person who's non-alcoholic, generally a good and responsible person, but on one particular incident uses bad judgment and or has some bad luck on one day and gets caught for DUI or accused of DUI.
And from your cases, what percentage of these people are alcoholics versus just normal people?
I would say that the percentage of alcoholics are fairly small. I haven't done any statistical analysis, but less than 20%. 80% of the people are people, like I said, in the category who just used bad judgment on one particular day and got unlucky. Okay.
So it's a vast minority that are truly drunk drivers.
Correct. Although there is definitely that category who gets repeat DUIs and so forth, and really has who do pose a serious threat and danger, and they have a recurrent problem to society themselves.
Okay. And this leads into the next question. So this may be hard to answer, but what percentage of your clients have blood alcohol levels that are close to the limit versus being a lot higher?
I would say that more than 50% more than half of people are significantly above the minimum limit of 0.08. There is some percentage, I'm not exactly sure, but about a quarter to a third that are very close to the limit, meaning between 0.08 and 1.0. But certainly 2/3 to 3/4 of people are well above the legal limit.
Okay, interesting. And of these DUI cases, what percentage of them have gone to trial versus been settled out of court?
Depends what lawyer you ask. In general, I would say about 1% at most of DUI cases go to trial, and the other 99% settle. With certain lawyers like me or others who are fairly experienced and vociferously fight for DUIs, maybe it's as high as 3 or 4%.
Well, that's good to know that most of them don't have to go to trial to be resolved.
Correct.
It's very good to know. Okay. And what would be your best tip, when someone's just been pulled over and maybe they've had a drink or more drinks, and, what should they do, what shouldn't they do now that they've been pulled over?
I would say that speaking and saying the minimum amount would probably be best, and try to be as cooperative and focused as you can with the police at that point.
Okay. So I guess, talking too much and offering too much information would certainly get you in more trouble, right?
Correct. The best thing to do is to speak as little as possible and just focus on following directions.
Okay. And for your practice specifically, what kinds of help can you provide to, people accused of DUI? Can you, possibly help reduce their time in jail or their fines, or, maybe get their charge reduced? I know these are all maybes, but what kind of things can you do?
Well, the number one way in which I can help someone is in most of the DUI cases that I represent people, I either completely prevent or vastly reduce any jail time that they spend. Right now I'm referring to first DUIs.
Okay.
When I refer to multiple DUIs, it's sort of a different category. But in the majority of cases that I get, the by far 90% of the DUI cases that come to me are first DUIs. And in first DUIs, I can prevent completely or minimize the amount of jail time granted. And the other thing I can prevent or minimize is the time of the license suspension. So while I may not be able to make a DUI go away when there's valid evidence for it, I can often negotiate it down to a form of reckless driving, or at least completely minimize the consequences to the absolute statutory minimum possible.
Okay, those are pretty powerful things you can do. It's good to know.
That's the way that I or a good lawyer can add value to the client representing themselves.
Okay, and that would make me feel a lot better if I knew that you can do those things. Okay. Is it wise to take I'll repeat the question. Is it wise to take a DUI case to trial and to settle it beforehand if it's a non-aggravated, first-time DUI?
It really depends on the specific facts and evidence in the case. If you have what I call a valid legal or factual issue, then it may very well be worth it to take it to trial. However, you need to consider the fact that in general, juries are very, very negatively predisposed towards DUI cases. So you really need to have something solid. If you don't have something absolutely solid, it's better to use that as leverage to negotiate a better deal than actually to go to trial.
Okay. And, in all the years that you've been doing DUI and criminal law, what have you learned about, people's behavior and their reaction to being arrested and prosecuted? What kind of insights have you gained into this whole process from being around it for so long?
Well, I've noticed that 90% of the cases that I have are first-time DUIs, and it usually does not rub people very well when they realize that for the first time in their life, they've been criminalized and they've been treated like criminals. They've had the police stop them, detain them, handcuff them. It really is a slap in anyone's face to an otherwise law-abiding citizen who suddenly has become a criminal. So people have a certain level of indignation, and for the first time they're threatened at having a criminal record, at having their rights violated, their license suspended. So people have a lot of strong reactions at first. At the same time, I've seen a lot of people be contrite and have a lot of self-awareness and acknowledgement that they realize that they do take responsibility and made a mistake and want to, pay the consequences, but move on with their life as quickly as possible.
Okay. And out of all the punishments that come with a DUI, which one seems to be the most negative in terms of people's reaction? Is it the license suspension or the jail, or what's the most hurtful thing?
I would say the license suspension tends to be the most alarming to people. Not to say that jail time or sheriff work program, community service time isn't a deterrent as well. But a lot of people absolutely need to drive for work or for family or both, and their license being suspended for any period seems horrific to them, and that seems to be the largest consequence.
Okay, interesting. Do you feel like the current DUI punishments are too harsh, or are they too lax, and why do you feel like that?
Well, as a defense lawyer, I'd like to say that the reason why I fight them is because they're too harsh. But in fact, it is a reality statistic that more people die in the United States every year due to alcohol-related traffic accidents than in both Iraq and Afghanistan combined. So the police are getting tired of basically peeling bodies off the roads that were hurt because of drunk driving. So most people can understand how drinking and driving really is a threat to human safety and life. So I don't think that the punishments are too harsh. I think that there needs to be a setup which really deters people from drinking and driving and putting that risk to human life. But that being said, when I deal with clients one-on-one and I see that a person as an individual is not a threat to society, can learn to be a safe driver and a safe person, then that's my greatest joy as a lawyer, to help them navigate and make their way out of the system.
Okay, that's very interesting. What do you see now as the future of DUI law, in terms of punishments and how many people are going to commit DUIs?
I see the future of DUIs as it's something that will never ever stop, in the sense that alcohol and to some extent drugs, both legal and illegal, are part of our society, and people will always indulge and sometimes overindulge. I think that everyone at some point, or everyone who drinks at some point or another, has drank questionably too much and driven and got away with it, and without incident or accident. But I think that will be times when the police continue to monitor the roads, that people will continually be caught over the limit, and that I think that California, where I practice, has instituted a very, very good regimen which really seeks to educate more than punish people first time around, so that they, rather than getting too extreme a punishment, have a good lesson that they learn so that it never happens again.
Okay. We're pretty close to finishing the questions. I just have a few more. What's the ballpark cost of a DUI from start to finish? Assuming that there's no trial involved, it's not aggravated, it's more of a simple case.
On average, my law office charges $5,000 for a DUI representation, both at court, which is the criminal process, and at the DMV, which is the administrative hearing.
Okay.
If a case were to go to trial, that may be an additional $2,500.
Okay, and as you said before, so few of them go that, it's rare that someone would...
It's almost irrelevant.
Okay. And what would you say makes your firm really unique in providing DUI defense?
Well, as I said earlier, I really try to identify with the individual and explain to them how, although this seems like a nightmare that has befallen them, in fact, this is something that we can get them out of and get their license back and have them move on with a good lesson in no time at all. And I try to make it as seamless as possible, where the person gets the maximum amount of the lesson with the minimum amount of the negative consequences, and get them out of it as fast as possible. I also emphasize to my clients that as soon as is possible after the DUI, I like to help them expunge and clear their criminal record so that they have a clean slate.